Vlawg Thursdays, and we have been given a gem of a concrete example to apply knowledge we have acquired through previous Vlawgs. Omarosa recording conversations in the White House with John Kelly, phone conversations with President Trump. It is a pure classic example to analyze both in terms of the law and in terms of her body movement during that interview on USA Today. That was bizarre.
Know your Vlawg.
Now, I'm going to preface this by saying that nothing in this video is political. I'm not taking a political position one way or the other. My sentiments, to the extent that they are conscious and deliberate, are not motivated or guided by political affiliation. This is just going to be an analysis. I say this knowing that our very view of the world, at its most fundamental sense, is potentially influenced by our political positions, ideologies, point of views. But the purpose of this video is not a partisan attack or analysis on anything. It is just to analyze this from a legal perspective and shed some light on the non-verbal but just as telling body language issues. So you will recall in a previous vlog we discussed whether or not you can secretly record a conversation with someone, and when this news story with Omarosa broke and I was like, holy cow, she was recording in Washington. I went to Google and I put in Washington two-party consent, and it turns out that Washington is a two-party consent state, which meant that her recording a conversation secretly with John Kelly without telling him was illegal. And then I realized I was in Washington state and not Washington DC. Washington DC is a one-party consent state, meaning that you can secretly record a conversation. So Omarosa recording her conversation with John Kelly, all other things being equal, is not illegal in the... Guys? I'm doing a law vlog here. I will not get into whether or not it is legal to secretly record conversations in the White House, in secured rooms, national security conversations with the president or his administrators. I don't know the answer to that question. I suspect there might be something illegal about doing that, but I don't know. That said, as far as the one-party consent state goes, District of Columbia, not illegal to record a conversation with someone without telling them. The other thing that is amazing that happened in the last week was Omarosa's interview on Today. Go back to my episode where I analyzed Logan Paul's body language in his interview with Casey Neistat. We're gonna do the same thing this week with Omarosa because it is something to behold. Let's go do this. So Omarosa appeared on the Today show with an interviewer named Savannah, who I don't know who she is, but my goodness, is she taking some flack in the comment sections as to having been outdone and outwitted and outsmarted by Omarosa. We're going to go through this because this not only is a good exercise in analyzing body language and the nonverbals of an interview, it's also a good time to delve into what makes something a good versus a bad cross-examination, because some interviews are interviews and explorative, others are more along the lines of a cross-examination, and this interview with Omarosa should have been conducted more like a cross-examination than an open-ended friendly interview. But let's begin with the recording she had of the conversation she had with the president.
Omarosa, what's going on? I just saw on the news that you're thinking about leaving. What happened?
General Kelly came to me and said that you guys wanted me to leave.
No, nobody even told me about it. Nobody. Wow. You know, they run a big operation, but I didn't know it. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Damn it.
So for those of you who haven't seen the previous episodes, I did say that judges don't like it when people secretly record conversations. I also said that oftentimes those secret recordings don't make the person doing the recording look better. Wow. Oh. There is a certain insincerity that you cannot fake when you know that you are recording a conversation with somebody. You act in a way that is so obnoxiously passive-aggressive. Phony. It's phony. You are acting in such a way that you want to get a reaction out of the person you're talking to who doesn't know that you're recording, so you act in a way that's absolutely unnatural and insincere. That is exactly what Omarosa is doing in this conversation. First of all, interesting thing, having listened to the John Kelly recording, we know that what she's telling the president as to why they asked her to leave is not entirely accurate. On the one hand, she recorded a conversation the day earlier when she got fired without telling John Kelly. Knowing what was in that recording, she then tapes a conversation with President Trump the next day and misleads him as to what the tenor of her conversation with John Kelly was while recording him. Anyone will remember the recording that Mel Gibson's wife made with Mel Gibson on the phone where he was out of his mind, crazy and swearing and cussing and frothing at the mouth. But his wife came off as utterly insincere. They both got flack in the comment sections in terms of their behavior, because while the wife caught Mel Gibson in a moment of absolute madness, she came off just as bad in her insincerity.
Now, good morning. Good to see you.
Glad to be back here at the Today Show.
Glad to be back here at the Today Show. What a bizarre thing to say, like in the beginning of an interview, like, glad to be back here at the Today Show. As though she has to remind herself where she is. It was a very bizarre intro to the interview. And what she's wearing. I'm not commenting on the clothing for the sake of being a fashionista or a fashion judge. What I'm saying when looking at this, everything is done deliberately. There is not one thing that she's wearing that is an accident.
Should let you know I am recording this conversation.
Oh, very good.
Oh, notice that. Oh, very good.
Very good. What a point.
The most awkward laugh in the world, as though... The joke was tacky, and it's not the way you make a guest feel welcome and comfortable if you want to get the truth out of the person. In previous vlogs, I sort of said there are two ways to get the truth out of somebody: intimidate them or make them feel comfortable. Omarosa is not going to be intimidated, but this is certainly not going to make her feel comfortable to be open and forthright in this interview. It is to say, haha, you did something dirty right from the beginning, I'm never going to forget it, but let's get into the interview and see how welcoming you are to the rest of my questions.
Is he lying in that tape?
I'm not certain, but what's most concerning, one, why was I locked in the Situation Room for almost 2 hours?
Was he lying? I'm not certain, but let me move on to an entirely new question that nobody asked. In examinations, when witnesses offer information to a question that I didn't ask, I would oftentimes let them go on forever, let them go on until they actually talk themselves out, and then I would just sit there and stare at them and say, that's a very nice detailed answer to a question I never asked. Why are you telling me this? And then they'll go, ugh. What this is the pivot from the question asked into a rehearsed, staged piece of info that Omarosa was going to get out one way or another, and she just happened to pivot to it in a not so subtle way. Offer an entirely different answer to a question nobody asked to evade the original question that was asked.
Why was I not allowed to leave? I'll get to the second part.
And lastly,
I'll get to the second part. You haven't gotten to the first part. This is a classic evading the answer, pivoting to a separate issue that you want to get out there because you think it's going to help you, and you're not sure that the person's going to ask you the right question to allow you to elect that information. Very interesting.
He probably instructed General Kelly to do it so that he could keep his hands clean when he spoke to me.
He probably instructed General Kelly to do it. This in law is what we call hearsay, whereas she has no personal direct knowledge of what she's saying.
it's the they in the tape. You can't ask.
A question and then ask another question without my answer.
This is another way. By the way, I watched this a few times because I was confused the first time. I didn't recall Savannah asking a question and then another question. What I did recall seeing was Omarosa answering her own question, which Savannah hadn't asked her, and not answering the original first question, which was quite clear. But this is a deliberate tactic to make Savannah feel uncomfortable, insecure. It's a way of belittling Savannah so that she lets go of the reins of this interview and lets Omarosa do what she wants. Because Omarosa is steamrolling her here, there's no question. Whether or not anyone thinks it makes Omarosa look good, honest, sincere, transparent, that's a judgment call that is purely up to the individual doing the observing. But it is clear, Omarosa is taking control of this through games, through answering questions that she's asking herself, and then intimidating, belittling, or otherwise making the actual interviewer feel small and backing off.
Do you think the president lies often?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, there was
How long
a report,
have you known that?
There was a report that said that he lied almost 4,000 lies.
And again here, I'm not defending Trump, and there's no but to that. This question is what we call a classic answering from someone else's information. Do you think the president lies? Oh yes, there was a report that said he lies? That is to say, oh yes, for sure, I have an opinion, but it's not based on my own observations. It's based on stuff that I've read, which I choose to believe so that it can support my current belief. There is a difference between observing from your own personal experience and deducing from the information from others. What this is a classic, I'm not answering the question from my personal perspective because I get to answer the question the way I want to by appealing and relying on the information provided by others. It's an insincere and disingenuous answer to a question. Witnesses do it all the time. They don't want to lie. So what they do instead of lying is they say, oh yes, I believe this, but it's not based on my own experience, which I don't actually have to justify that belief. It's based on information that I have ascertained from others. So it's not a lie to say it. It's a very interesting way of answering a question dishonestly, but honestly, without actually lying, but answering it the way you want to, in a way that you would not be able to because you don't have the personal experience to answer it the way you want to.
In the last year. Have you known that he is a liar, as you say?
Well, absolutely.
Why did you work for him?
Savannah, slow down.
Savannah, slow down.
I'm going to ask your question. Don't worry, I'm here. I've got all the time.
Yeah, no, but I'm...
Don't worry, I'm here. I've got all the time you need. Slow down, Savannah. I'm here. I got all the time you need. And by the way, I'm going to come back to this a little later because this is not true. We don't have all the time. I'm not here. You booked me for 7 minutes, not 10 minutes, and I have to be somewhere else. So again, it's disingenuous, but it is a way of making someone feel very small. Savannah, child, slow down. I'll answer your question. It makes the examiner, the questioner, the person doing the interview feel very small, almost childish, so that they again back off and let her say what she's going to say, which is an answer to a question that Savannah has not yet asked.
So you don't have to ask 10 questions in 1 second. It's okay.
It's okay. You don't have to ask 10 questions in 1 second, which never happened. But I'm saying it in a way which is so condescending that you're going to back off and let me say what I have to say. Witnesses do this to lawyers all the time, and the younger the lawyer, both in experience and in age, the more inclined they are to get bullied, to get belittled, to get demeaned, and to just sort of shrivel up into a ball and say, okay, I'm sorry. But experienced reporters, experienced lawyers do not necessarily put up with this, or they let the witness go off like this because while it might make the witness feel strong and powerful at that moment in time, when a judge reads the transcript, when the public sees the interview, they're not necessarily going to be impressed by these types of shenanigans.
Why are you taping people, and what does that say about you?
But don't you see the irony of all people, Sarah Huckabee Sanders saying that this book is full of lies when she lies to the American people every day?
Everyone who hasn't seen it should go back and watch my Logan Paul body analysis. There was what I call the diversion, bringing other people into our wrongdoings to minimize our own wrongdoings. The question was, why are you going around recording conversations?
Why are you taping people, and what does that say about you?
But don't you see the irony of all?
No answer. Pivot to another question to invoke someone else's alleged wrongdoing. Classic. Evasion, pivot, bring in other people to blame for something else so that it can sort of detract from my own improper conduct. Because I think we can all agree that recording conversations with other people without telling them and doing it systematically is an indication that something is wrong. People might believe that she was doing it out of necessity for certain reasons, but we can all agree recording conversations with other people without telling them is objectively bizarre, and unless there is a compelling reason to do it.
Let's talk about one of the most explosive allegations in the book, and actually
there's a lot.
Subsequently, there are many. There are. Luckily, you said you'd be here a while, so we're good.
Oof.
Luckily,
And she turns to the camera to sell you on this book. Oh, there's a lot. There's more than what we got here. Better buy my book.
play what you said on ABC about whether the president is a racist the day after you were fired.
Yes.
That face right there. She knows she is on the verge of getting caught between two absolutely irreconcilable statements. She's uncomfortable about it, but she has to feign the utmost of confidence before she faces this hurdle, which she's prepared for, but she's getting into the mood to address this question. Like in poker, when exuding overconfidence is usually a sign of a weak hand, it's exactly what she's doing right now with this face. To project onto you, the viewer, that she has to be telling the truth and she has to be comfortable with this because she looks so confident in what she's about to say.
Do you think this president is racist?
Why did you say then he's not a racist?
First of all,
you say that was the day after you left.
First of all, I had just come out of, like you said, the day after I left.
This is an interesting lesson to be learned by the interviewer. When you complicate a question with too many extraneous facts, you make it A, more difficult to answer, and B, easier for the witness to circumvent and bend to their advantage, which Omarosa does quite well. Why did you say then that he wasn't a racist, but now you're saying that he is, and that was the day after you left? That's a convoluted question. It's going to confuse some witnesses who want to answer it genuinely, and for someone who is as crafted and intelligent as Omarosa, it's going to allow them to play the facts that you've interjected in that question unnecessarily in their favor. Simple questions in cross-examination, simple questions in interviews. The more complex the question, the more you lose the witness, or the more you allow them to circumvent the actual answer and make the answer fit their narrative much more easily.
You know that it's a 7-minute interview.
Now we're at 10.
Now we're at 10.
Look at that. You know it's a 7-minute interview. Now we're at 10. Do you know what that means? This is not about the truth. I mean, it probably goes without saying. This is about selling a book. You knew this was a 7-minute interview. Now we're at 10. You owe me.
The book comes out tomorrow.
All of this is in the book, and I hope that your viewers will take an opportunity to read it and learn about this incredible journey that I had for 15 years with the President of the United States. And every single thing that you've heard on that tape is in this book, and many more.
Oh, okay. Well, anyhow, that interview.